Welcome back to the TitleTown Rundown here on Boston Sports Zone. Joey Matroni alongside Kyler Quelch, and we are delighted to be joined by Will Perillo as we get set for a Patriots season preview podcast episode here on the TitleTown Rundown. We got a lot to get to with the Patriots, but we'll get it started with some of the key acquisitions. Fellas, I know that one of the bigger stories of the offseason was whether or not the Patriots were going to end up with A.J. Brown. And when we got to that June 1st checkpoint, that's when the move came down. The Patriots do end up with their number one wide receiver in A.J. Brown, a move that I'm pretty sure every Patriots fan had been waiting for to really get that number one wide receiver. Obviously, Stephon Diggs had a great 1,000+ yard season a year ago. He does not end up back on this team, but you get a wonderful replacement in A.J. Brown. It was a trade that sent a 2028 first-round pick, a 2027 fifth-round pick to Philadelphia in exchange for A.J. Brown, who's coming off his fourth consecutive 1,000-yard season, so the Patriots are looking for a big impact out of Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I told you before, Joey, that when we were talking about this the first time around, when it actually broke, that this is a big move for them. If they really want to contend, especially with their schedule this year, they had to make that move to get that game changer. That's what he is. He's a game changer. It's not like he's a system guy. Brady used to get away with just having systematic guys. Unfortunately, the game has progressed so much now to where you need those guys who can be that deep threat or that guy that can make that catch in an instant deep down the field. And AJ is that guy. He's very familiar with Mike Vrabel, who Vrabel did not want to trade in his last job when he got fired. I still think it's an injustice. Just stay out of the extracurriculars, Mike, please. But other than that, yeah, I look at it and I say, look, Brown is the type of guy they needed in order to be successful, and I think that Drake Maye is ready for this challenge, and to have a weapon like him and also Doubs around him as well. I think they're really building around the quarterback for the first time, like where you're able to put pieces around him versus it was just about the quarterback when you had the greatest quarterback of all time. So it's a little bit of different roster building, but I think ownership has really allowed for them to kind of pivot away from what they used to do to keep up with the modern NFL. Will, what are your thoughts?
Just to bridge off of a point that you made, we're not really used to these splash moves where we're actually willing to pay for a guy, willing to pay the price contract-wise and trade value-wise. For years, we got very used to bouncing around minimum contract receivers, and like you said, we had the greatest quarterback of all time, so that's obviously going to help. But I think that there was a lot of people that were unsure if we'd even make the move, just because for decades we haven't been the team that's going to make the move. We're going to be the team that makes guys take pay cuts. We're going to be the team that's looking to just kind of bend the roster around Brady and Belichick. And I think that these splash moves are great. I agree that you need an X receiver that's going to go out, make plays. And I don't know what we're going to get out of A.J. Brown, but from what I've seen from some of the clips and OTAs and just being around there, he's definitely a guy that came in, and you watched Romeo Doubs come in and you said, all right, it's Romeo Doubs, he's a good receiver, he's making plays. When A.J. Brown got in, pretty much immediately, it was, okay, yeah, that's A.J. Brown. You saw him making plays that most receivers can't make, and I don't know what we're going to get out of him. Obviously, he has injury history, and there are some concerns with him, but if you think this can be the A.J. Brown that we've seen for the past 4 years, and especially 2 years ago when he was a 1,400-yard guy, I mean, that's honestly key to making a run, making a push. The schedule's getting a lot harder. And, yeah, I think him and Doubs, both on the outside, are going to be able to be a huge, huge help to Drake Maye. And, I mean, we're going to see a lot of different packages this year. The other teams in the NFL have seen what we can do. They've seen that Drake Maye is a legit player. And obviously the year after that, quarterbacks typically can have a slump. You look at the history there, a lot of second-year quarterbacks that go to the Super Bowl, teams treat them a lot differently after. There's a lot of slumps. There's a lot of guys that have growing pains after that. But yeah, I think that it's a great move, and I'm very glad we made it. It's very nice to see a Boston sports team be willing to give up something and actually pay a guy. So yeah, I couldn't love the deal anymore.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think that the desire to make the move kind of shows that we're ushering in a new era of Patriots football. You mentioned a little bit earlier in the lead up, Will, the Brady and Belichick era, how you were building around Brady. Now you're doing a different sort of building around Drake Maye and the type of team that Mike Vrabel coaches has a certain tenacity around it. And then looking at this connection between Drake Maye and AJ Brown, we saw what a success it was for Drake Maye this year in terms of his deep ball throwing and how well he was able to stretch the field with his throwing ability. And I think a guy like AJ Brown fits that exactly. And even if the defenses going against Drake Maye do make the changes to where you're seeing them focus on that more, I think physically AJ Brown is the type of guy that can still go up and make those catches and be able to get you the chunk plays that in years past you really weren't able to get, and you were forced into sort of a methodical drive every time down the field. I think now you'll even have more opportunities for explosive plays having a guy like AJ Brown.
It reminds me of Josh Allen, to be honest, and how they built around him with both a complementary defense and a complementary offense. They brought in Diggs in his heyday. They brought in Knox. They brought in guys like Milano and Miller on defense. Yeah, like it just reminds me of those good Bills teams that were really trying to make a push. Now, do I think their coaching is New England's coaching is better than the Bills? Absolutely. I wouldn't trust McDaniels to be my head coach, but if I was the head coach or somebody else was the head coach and somebody very good on defense is managing it, I would want him to have my offense 10 times out of 10. He's great at pushing guys. He got a lot out of Diggs last year. I think New England is a better scheme fit for AJ because the Eagles were trying to move away from trying to pass the ball as much and go deep down the field. They were running the ball more. They got Saquon, much to my dismay. I do not like the Eagles, do not like that Saquon went there. Okay, that gives you a little hint into my other team, but I do like what the Patriots have done, and I think that Josh McDaniels will work with AJ. His only question mark to me is can he stay healthy? But in a good New England team, he's definitely going to have more catches for yards. He's definitely going to improve on his numbers because the Eagles really were moving away from him last year. And even on the articles that I was reading, everybody was like, oh yeah, we all knew AJ was on his way out. And he wanted to come to New England. New England a couple of years ago, you had to overpay to get players. And now people want to come to New England again because of how ownership has taken ownership. Take notes, Mr. Henry. And, I think that it certainly, to me, seems like they brought in the right coaches and the right players to fit what they need.
Yeah, I definitely think with all the additions, it's also just going to open up the offense a ton. When you have guys like Romeo, Doubs, and AJ Brown coming in, who knows? That could open up a huge role for a guy like Kyle Williams to come in and make plays. Not a lot of teams are going to be looking at him. We have another receiver coming in, Jimmy Kibble. He's a rookie. He reminds me a lot of the prototypical slot guys that we've had, except he's a lot bigger. He's kind of this year's Efton Chisholm. where Chisholm was 5'10", this guy's about 6'2", 210, and he can move. That's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised gets on the roster and also will find himself on the field. Don't hear his name as much because of the moves we've been making, but we still have Mac Hollins, one of the best run blocking receivers that's going to be on the outside. I think this offense is just seriously going to open up. Elijah Vera Tucker, when he's healthy, is one of the best guards in football. Moving Jared Wilson around, both of those guys are going to be able to help out Will Campbell. Obviously, we saw the growing pains with him last year in the playoffs, which what can you expect? You had a guy that played against some subpar defensive lines during the season, and then he went into the playoffs and had to go up against the Broncos front, the Texans front, and the Seahawks front. So that's what you can expect from a rookie playing left tackle in those type of games. And I think that bringing in some offensive linemen is definitely going to be able to help him grow. And I just think the offense under Josh McDaniels, I think it's just going to be very open for guys to kind of come in and make plays. And Reggie Gilliam, another very underrated signing. He's going to be great as a fullback. I know there's been a lot of people saying him being at fullback is going to help Travion Henderson. He had some vision pains last year. Wasn't great reading holes. He was a big home run hitter, but he also had a lot of run throughs, just getting stuck for no gain, and a lot of it was him just reading the holes and reading the gaps. And a guy like Reggie Gilliam is definitely going to be able to help him out there with that 1-2 punch with him and Stevenson. But yeah, I think this offense, there's definitely a lot of room to grow, and I think it could be a very, very high-powered offense.
Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up the running game, because there's been so much talk in the offseason about AJ Brown and how different this wide receiver room looks, and if it might be one of the top wide receiver rooms in the league. But if all of the focus is going to the receivers, not only from a fan perspective, but now opposing defenses have to look at it that way as well, it might open things up for guys like Stevenson and Henderson as well. I think that you're looking for they're both going to play a role again. I'm not sure how that carry share isn't necessarily going to work out now, but we'll see as the season gets going what it's going to look like more and more. But with a guy and Henderson who's looking to take another leap, I think you're right in mentioning that you want to see him take a more consistent play style. The home run hitting aspect, meaning those long runs, was great in the way that the offense worked. We saw it multiple times in the Tampa Bay game, and then again in the Buffalo home game throughout the season. He made a difference for sure. And then even if we can go into this area of the season, he opened up the preseason last year with a kickoff return. So you saw the explosive ability right away, and that's great to have in a running back. But if you want him to sort of be that guy eventually, and then have Stevenson sort of play off of that, you want to see Henderson be able to consistently find those holes and get you anywhere from 5 to 7 yards anytime he touches the ball on the ground.
What do you think? Are you looking forward to most in training camp? Will?
For me, honestly, it's going to be my first year ever that I'm around it every single day. So the whole aspect of just being there and really seeing players play every day, seeing the way the connections are going to grow. Like I said, Doubs and Maye definitely had some growing pains at first. It was a little harder for them to find a connection, where a guy like AJ Brown, you watched him, instantly made a connection. Just seeing the players actually interact and the team kind of turn into a team, if that makes sense. Because obviously bringing in new pieces, it is totally a business. These guys are all here to get paid, and seeing the team actually form into a team rather than just a bunch of pieces you threw down onto a football field and told them to play. So I'm very intrigued to see what it's like seeing firsthand every single day these guys practicing, these guys improving, and seeing kind of the standouts. Like every year there's somebody that everyone's talking about in camp. Like last year last year everyone loved Efton Chisholm, because that was the guy that reminded us of a lot of the receivers we've had in the past. This year, like I said a second ago, I wouldn't be surprised if everyone's talking about Jimmy Kibble and there's Instagram fan pages made about him. So I do definitely love seeing all that stuff firsthand because it's a Boston team. It's the Patriots. There's nothing I don't love about them. So I'm gonna love being there every day, seeing them practice, seeing the guys interact. So yeah, just being around it in general, I'd say, is what I'm looking forward to the most.
What do you need to see from the Patriots in order for them to take a step forward?
We're definitely going to need to see the O-line be healthy, and we're going to need to see the O-line perform because I'd say that was our biggest issue last year. Obviously, we didn't have a bunch of big-name weapons outside of Stephon Diggs, who is, everyone would agree, is towards the end of his prime. And I think just having the O-line improve would probably be the biggest thing. I think a guy like Jared Wilson could be great this year. Lemieux, I don't know if he's going to be starting immediately. That has been the talk, is that they're going to have him sit for a year. Not that he's not necessarily ready, but just to not have him thrown into the storm of the schedule we have. So maybe by a week 8, week 9, have him start coming into the role. And obviously, bearing injuries, he could end up playing right away. But I think the offensive line is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, and just building off of what you were saying about Lomu too, we saw it with Thayer Mumford last year, where the Patriots would run a lot of 6 offensive linemen sets if they were trying to establish something on the ground. So even then, if Lomu doesn't end up in a starting position right away, maybe that's the sort of role he plays in bringing some extra leverage in running situations, and how we'll see how that plays out as we get closer to the start of the season. But then the other thing I wanted to ask Will in terms of training camp is when obviously we're not necessarily consistently in pads yet at this point in the off season. So what do you think, what would you want to see in the build up as we're getting closer and closer, and then when we get to August is when we'll start seeing some preseason games, and then we'll see guys in real game action when that time comes around. But what does the build-up look like in terms of starting out now, and then when we get into pads and leading into the start of the preseason?
I think, obviously, there's growing pains with every team at the start of the year. You're getting back into it. I think that right now, from what I'm seeing, they're kind of just running over basic plays, not necessarily half speed, but they're not running full speed either. We got training camp coming up this Friday, so that's when I'm going to be able to really get a look at what everything's looking like. But at OTAs so far, when they did that about 2-3 weeks ago now, watching that, it's just kind of the team coming together and knocking off some of the rust. Obviously, these guys are working all offseason, but getting back into a team form rather than a more self-centered form of just working on your own. I'm just looking forward to seeing the thing I'd say I'm most looking forward to watching with this training camp is seeing who's going to come out as that next wide receiver after Doubs and Brown. I think that's going to be a great battle. I know Pop Douglas, before he puts on the pads pretty much every year, looks incredible. Small, shifty guy, very fast twitch. So that's a guy that's looked great so far. But like I said, I've been hearing that for the past 3 years, that he looks great coming out of camp before the pads go on. So yeah, I'd say like the build up mostly before pads and going into preseason is just going to be knocking off growing pains and forcing the team to actually bond together in a way.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and it'll be interesting to see who does stand out in terms of when the pads do go on and when the preseason games do start to happen. I think what we've learned in the first year under Mike Vrabel is that there's always a certain amount of intensity that comes along with the way that he coaches and the way that these guys will be preparing heading into the start of the season. So I think that for that reason, it's always intriguing to see what things are going to look like when things really do start to ramp up as we get set for training camp. But I wanted to go on the defensive side quickly, if we could. The one of the other big acquisitions in the offseason was Kevin Byard. Um, at the safety spot, we saw a young guy in Craig Woodson kind of step up in that safety spot towards the end of the season. He had kind of a standout performance in a Super Bowl that really didn't go the way the Patriots wanted to in any aspect. But if there was a bright spot, he was one of them. How do you feel like Kevin Byard can add to this team while also helping the younger guys grow in that safety group?
That was 100% one of the points I wanted to bring up. I think Byard's going to be an incredible addition to that secondary. I think the way he'll be able to help Woodson is going to be great. Like you said, Woodson in that Super Bowl was one of our only guys. If you watched that game, you said this guy's making plays. He was in the backfield a lot. He helped us a ton, and I think he has a ton of talent. I think that secondary could be very dangerous. It's going to be hard to throw on. It's a lot of ball hawks back there, and obviously Christian Gonzalez is still there. Depending on what's going on with his contract, if we can figure that out soon, I do think we're going to end up extending him. I think that whole secondary is going to be great. Carlton Davis is still here. That's a very underrated corner that we have. I think overall, I think he's just going to be able to be there. Byard's been around for a while. He's been on good teams. He's been on bad teams. He's been through the league. He's definitely what you would call a veteran, and he's who you would want in your secondary, mentoring some of these younger guys like Craig Woodson.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that defense pretty much carried their way through games where Drake struggled. You know, I think like for him, like that second year was a huge year of growth for him, and especially bringing in, you know, Josh really helped him. But I also think bringing in Davis, bringing in Milton Williams, obviously, you know, really putting money into that defense and also bringing in a lot of younger guys, the mix of the two things really helped that team defensively. And I think it is a key kind of going forward. You saw them in the playoffs when Drake struggled. They were kind of the backbone of the team. Defense wins championships, as my old man used to say. Still does say it. So I think you do have to have a good defense. And they've done a good job building around that. I really do have to give them credit there. The one thing I will say is they need to do that extension with Gonzalez before it becomes another Bill Belichick showdown with him, or, you know, kind of messing with the locker room chemistry a little bit.
100%. I do think we're going to come to terms with him soon, hopefully sooner rather than later. Just to add on to the secondary, there's another guy that looks great, Kobe Minor. He's a first-year guy. He's kind of like a nickel corner, 5'10", 5'11" guy. He's extremely fast, and he's definitely made his name known throughout OTAs. So I think that's another guy that I wouldn't be surprised if we see him make some plays in the preseason, maybe get on the field a little bit during the season. I do think that this is a much deeper roster than we had last year. I think that this roster, we filled a lot of holes and we added some star talent. Like, we still have guys in the defense like Harold Landry when he's healthy. That's another great player. Milton Williams. When healthy, I think we have a very deep defense, and I think it can be one of the best units in the league if everyone can stay healthy. And
Yeah, for sure. I think especially Milton Williams was a huge add to this defense. Obviously, at the D tackle spot, there was a lot of talk about Christian Barmore before the add of Milton Williams, and then them two together kind of created a strong duo that was tough for any sort of offensive line to go after. And then we saw it start from the first game in the playoffs against the Chargers. Milton Williams was a problem there, and it kind of rode all the way into the rest of the postseason leading up to the Super Bowl, where the defense as a whole swarmed the Texans, and specifically CJ Stroud. And then obviously the weather wasn't very favorable for either side in the AFC Championship game against the Denver Broncos. But the offense did what it needed to do, and the defense shut it down from there. So success for this team really did start last year from the way the defense played. And if they're looking to go that direction again, that is definitely somewhere they could go. But also now you want to have more confidence in your offense that if teams start to figure out the defense a little bit, now you're hoping that the offense can back them up, similar to what the defense was able to do this past season.
I think they're going to be fine on D. I think as long as they stay healthy, like we said, Milton Williams, when he was healthy, was a game changer on D. Like I feel like every time I listened to a game, it was Milton Williams getting to the quarterback, Milton Williams getting through that offensive line. Obviously, he got hurt midway through the year, and you'll have that. But him and Landry are both guys that, when they're healthy, really do elevate your defense. And I also think it's just a different energy, too, around the Patriots because it's not Belichick there anymore. I think that Vrabel just brings a positive energy, and he motivates guys in a way that's more relatable versus, and I think the way he talks to the media just kind of energizes the media, and that the media, as much as I, don't really like to talk about it, I think it is a very key point as well, because when you're playing well, you do want the media to hold you accountable, but at the same time, paint you in a more positive light. And when you have a coach that isn't really answering questions or is getting frustrated by it, that can be tough. And I think Mike really just embraced it last year. I also think that he really motivated the players to just do their best. He was high-fiving guys when they were winning games. And I don't think they're going to have quite the season they had last year because of the schedule difficulties, but I do think they will be going deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I think the fact that Mike Vrabel is a former player is a huge reason why I think that the players gravitated towards him right away. He wants to build a relationship not only on the field but also off the field with each of his players. The offseason was very interesting for him in terms of the media before coming back to the start of this season, but I still think that the success was undeniable in terms of how the season went for the Patriots after back-to-back 4-win seasons. We credited ownership all of last season as the run came, that they realized they might have made a mistake in hiring Drake Maye. They go with Mike Vrabel, and then immediately it's a 14-3 regular season and a loss in the Super Bowl. And obviously, the loss in the Super Bowl isn't anything you want. You don't want to get all the way to the Super Bowl just to lose, and unfortunately that's how it happened. But going into the season, nobody that was a Patriots fan would have believed that they were gonna even make the playoffs, let alone make the Super Bowl. So the fact that they were even to the Super Bowl is a major improvement from anything that we could have expected. Now, it is obviously tough to repeat that again, but the roster is still very good. Now, the schedule obviously will be a little bit tougher, but not too tough to the point where I don't think that I do think that the Patriots will still very much be back in the playoffs, and they'll be in the discussion in the AFC. Obviously, for so many years, Kansas City was at the top of the AFC conversation, and then Buffalo was in the area too. Obviously, Kansas City will be without Patrick Mahomes for a chunk of this season, so it'll be a different set of teams at the top of the AFC discussion. But I think that what we're seeing now after the success of last season is that we're back to where Patriots fans want to be, where you're always competing to make a deep run in the postseason.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the team's in a great spot. Some of the things I also want to touch on about the defense as well, like you were saying with Vrabel being a former player, I believe both of you brought that up. Vrabel's involved heavily in practice. I'm sure you've seen the clips online. He's constantly getting into it with guys. I think that gives us kind of that smash mouth identity that he's had his entire career as a coach. Very downhill, tough teams that are hard to break. They don't really bend. I do think it's going to be tough losing Jack Gibbons and Kevon Chason. I think those are two really, really good pieces we had last year. Obviously, we still have the help of Robert Spillane. He was great for us last year, and Christian Ellis was also great. I think we're gonna need a few guys to step up to kind of fill those smash mouth roles that guys like Gibbons and Chason had, so we can keep our identity as being one of the best, most physical defenses in the NFL. Which, the way Vrabel coaches, to go up your point, I think it's very possible that will happen, and there'll be two more names that we're talking about the same way we're talking about Chason and Gibbons right now, come 6 months from now.
Yeah, for sure. I think a ton of credit goes to Jack Gibbons for what he was able to do without Robert Spillane. When Spillane went down with an injury, Spillane has been the green dot on defense since he got here to New England until his injury last year, and then Gibbons kind of takes over that role, which means he's communicating all of the defensive mechanics to the team as they get set on every play, which is obviously a huge responsibility. And for a guy like Jack Gibbons to have done that at a high level this year is a credit to him. So losing out on him is going to be difficult to replace, as you said, Will. But a healthy Robert Spillane, I think, very much still fits that role. And then just in a general thought I had defensively, a ton of credit should go to Zach Kerr for the job that he did with the defense. In general, obviously, he takes over for Terrell Williams, who had been dealing with health issues throughout the majority of the season. So to be able to come into a season where you thought you were a defensive assistant and you end up taking on that defensive coordinator role and lead, in my eyes, one of the top defenses in the league when they really got going, is a huge credit to him. And I think that now he's had a whole season to or a whole off season to build a defense that will now entirely be his own as Terrell Williams moves his way up into an advisory role. Now Zach Kerr will fully take on that defensive coordinator role moving forward.
Do you think he should be the offensive coordinator? Because I think Patricia did that a couple of years ago. But no, in all seriousness, I think the fact that they've brought in such good coaches that actually know what position they're coaching. Yeah, like those last couple years of Bill Belichick, as good of a coach as he was, they had Joe Joke, as I like to call him, Joe Judge, and Matt Patricia as the coaches there offensively. It's like, thank goodness Josh is back to save Drake Maye. I'm glad Kraft also pushed to draft Drake Maye, because otherwise, who knows what you guys would have at quarterback. But I really do think that a lot of what they do works. When you bring in good coaching, when you lead by example with ownership, when you take accountability when you do make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. You're human. The longevity and sort of the trends that the Patriots have had is that they're winners. We might have a down season or two, but for the most part, we're in it almost every year. So I think it like a huge amount of credit should go to Kerr, should go to Josh should go to Vrabel and even Kraft. I really do think Kraft as an owner is good. I think that he made a couple of mistakes. He took ownership and he immediately, righted the ship, if you will. And, I think you need that in an organization. I think a lot of people overlook that and they're like, you just have to have the roster and the players. Even if you had, the Lord and Savior himself on a couple of those teams, I don't think you had the coaching to kind of help that. So I think those things go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, I actually had a question for you guys. Just looking down at the schedule, what would you consider a success for next year with the schedule we have? Not even necessarily record wise, but where would you say us falling next season? Whether it's a divisional round loss, an AFC championship loss, whatever it may be, what would you say a success would be for next season, given the obviously significantly tougher schedule we have, new look roster we have? What would you guys consider a success?
I think it's tough. As I said earlier, it's tough to follow up a season where you lose in the Super Bowl because there's not much better you can do other than winning the Super Bowl. But considering the increase in schedule, obviously, at the very least, I want to get to the playoffs, and I'd be satisfied, assuming that they get there if they were able to make the AFC Championship. Obviously, I'd want them to get to the Super Bowl at that point, but I wouldn't consider it a failure of a season losing in the AFC Championship game. I think that if you can replicate this again in the regular season to having double-digit wins and making the postseason, that again now officially sets the standard that this is where we want to be every year, and being able to build on getting to the Super Bowl and showing that it really wasn't just a one-off Cinderella run is a big step in the right direction in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm probably a little less harsh than the Boston media. I would actually say that I actually agree with you, Joey, where I think 10 to 12 wins and, getting to the conference championship or coming within a couple points of that is not necessarily a bad season. I think that's still a successful season. You just have a really tough conference in the AFC. Do I think that'll happen? I actually think they'll go back. I do.
Whoa.
They improved their team immensely. Like AJ Brown compared to Stephon Diggs is a significant step up. I also think that they've upgraded on D a little bit too. And they brought in Romeo to be the second receiver when you had a bunch of guys who were kind of third receivers last year. And if you look at Josh as an offensive coordinator, I know I keep saying this, but Josh is an offensive coordinator. He knows how to call those plays. He knows how to elevate his players. And he knows how to talk to the quarterback. He's like the quarterback whisperer. I swear. He just knows how to work with them. And I think that Drake Maye will take a step up. I think last year was a learning curve because it was his first time going to the playoffs. I think he'll be better in the playoffs. And if he's better in the playoffs, don't you think they're going to go a little bit further? Don't you think they might win that Super Bowl? I mean, it's a little bit of a bold take this early, obviously, and you don't know what you're going to have for injuries. But I believe in their coaching staff. I believe in the players they have. Why not?
Will, is that how you see it, or?
So one point that I don't think I heard you guys bring up it's been on my mind since last season. There's 4 guys in the AFC that Drake Maye did not have to face in the path to get to the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. I think next season, if we make the playoffs and we lose in the first round to a guy like Josh Allen, so be it. If we lose to a guy like Patrick Mahomes, so be it. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, any of those guys. If we lose to a quarterback like that, so be it. if we go out in the first round and we lose to Justin Herbert, who can't seem to get it done in the big games, I would say that that's a failure. So I think that it really comes down to those injuries because you can't predict a season. For all we care, some of those guys are hurt again. You never know. So I think obviously the regular season schedule has something to do with us being in the spot we were in last year. But I think the biggest thing about it is I think last year we were just a playoff. I think we were a playoff team in general. And I think we got hot because of the schedule we played. And then we got to the playoffs and we played Herbert, who doesn't perform well in the playoffs. We didn't have to play Bo Nix because he got hurt in the game prior, and CJ Stroud, who just looked like a complete shell of himself that we've seen for a lot of his career. So I think that those four guys, I think if we were to make the playoffs and lose to one of those four quarterbacks that I said that were hurt for a lot of last year, I think that season would still be a success. You can't hang your head over losing to a guy who is of the caliber of Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. So I think that just in general, making the playoffs and getting knocked out by one of those teams, I would be fine with. Outside that, I think 10 to 12 wins would be where we want to go. I don't know if you guys want to look at the schedule right now and kind of see what we think per game.
Yeah,
we
You guys have done
that'd
that.
be fun. That'd be fun. But I also have some more thought. I have another thought here where I think Herbert and Burrow, those are two different situations. But Herbert just hasn't had the right coaches or whatever around him. I think with Burrow, if he's healthy, yeah, he's great. But you also beat the Bills last year, so I'm not so sure I'd be worried about Josh as much. Although, and I think Lamar in the playoffs, he just runs, take his legs away. But yeah, but you're right. If you lose to Josh Allen, or Lamar plays one of his best games, or say Patrick Mahomes comes back and he's healthy, especially Mahomes, who could go toe to toe with Brady. Yeah, of course, I wouldn't call that an unsuccessful year if you're out in the first round. But week one is interesting to me. The rematch, so soon in the season. Are you going to be ready for that? You have to be
It's
ready
awesome.
for that.
I think it's awesome getting to face them so early in the season. I mean, you really can't ask for a better script for us there. That's a revenge game right there. It's going to be the first game of Brown and May. I think that we're going to be looking to make a lot of noise. I think that's a game that could definitely go either way. It's at Seattle. It's at Seattle, and it's hard to win in Seattle. I'll put it that way.
It's for sure a game that could go either way, but I tend to agree with you there, Will, that it's going to be tough to get it done in Seattle. And the way I see it is that if they win the game, great. But if they lose the game, it's fine because the teams are going to look a lot different when we get to the postseason. They're not going to be exactly the same, and you'll be more seasoned as you get to that point. And playing that tough of a game at the start of the season is a way different aspect of strength of schedule than we were just talking about how easy the Patriots had it in the regular season, which I really hated that argument, and we talked about it for the majority of the season going into it because they were a 4-13 team the year before. So you can only play the schedule that you're given, and now the schedule that you're given going into this season is undoubtedly more difficult. But I think that getting the win in week one against Seattle can be great momentum heading into the rest of the season, but I don't think it's going to derail the season if they don't end up coming out on top of that, is the way I see it.
I also think too, you bring in, I think that the tough part about this is that they make the argument that it was a really easy schedule. Okay, can the Jets win that many games? Can Cleveland do it? No. Because year in and year out, they get a bunch of head cases. So on coaching wise, so no, they cannot do that. And this comes from a guy who grew up not a Patriots fan, but grew to like the Patriots. And I think if you look at that week 1 game, like I'm not gonna give it to them if they lose that first game, because it's hard to play there. Like you said, the noise factor out there and how like in the crowd, like that really does play a huge role in it. And I would look for them to try to bounce back in week 2.
Yeah, stretching into week 2. I think week 2 versus Pittsburgh, I think that should be a win. New coaching staff over there. I think that's a team we lost to last year in pretty bad fashion that I don't think we will lose to again this year. I think that we could chalk up as a win week 1, like you said. Either way, I think when the betting odds come out for that game, I do not think we'll be favored. I'll put it that way. I think week 1 will be tough. But week 2 I would confidently say should be a win.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you much there. Week 3 against Jacksonville is another interesting one to me. Jacksonville had gotten the better of the Patriots in years past. I think that this Patriots team is different than the one that Jacksonville faced in London a couple years ago. It's a different version of Drake Maye, a much better version of Drake Maye. And it seems like going into every season, you're not sure what version of Trevor Lawrence Jacksonville is going to have. But if both quarterbacks are firing on all cylinders, it's going to be a close game. But I hope that Drake Maye has the type of plays where he can elevate you to the next level, and that's kind of where you're looking for him to go in this next stage of his career. Is can he play these close games against other top teams and make the plays that are going to get you wins, similar to how he did on Sunday Night Football against Buffalo a season ago? And can those star quarterback plays eventually translate to success in the postseason is something we'll find out as the year goes on.
Yeah, I think they beat Jacksonville, but like you said, if Trevor Lawrence is on, he's kind of like the New England weather, even though he's in Florida. He's not always sunny out over there. He's a little bit rainy, a little bit snowy, a little bit unpredictable, but he has the talent to keep up with somebody like Drake Maye. I just think that their coaching staff is better. I just think that they're going to find a way to prepare against the strength. Like they're going to say, hey, Milton Williams, put pressure on Trevor Lawrence. Like they're going to be bringing the pressure in that game. And the same could be said against Josh Allen the next week. So I guess that's just my opinion on that.
Yeah.
But I do think that they go 2-1 to start.
I would agree. Another point I'll make about that Jacksonville game is that Jacksonville team was, I believe, like 13th or 14th in passing defense. So a little pretty much middle of the pack, a little more towards the front end. But I believe they lost Greg Newsome and Wingard, which are two of their starters in the secondary. So those are going to be 2 losses. And I think that our passing offense this year is going to be great. I think with the additions to the O-line and everything we've talked about so far, I think we're going to be able to throw the ball all over most teams. So, yeah, I would chalk that up to a win as well. And then, obviously, at Buffalo, week 4, it's another toss-up. I do think the Bills got a little worse this offseason. I know they made the addition to DJ Moore, but I don't think they necessarily improved this offseason in the ways that we did. So
I honestly call it a win.
Yeah, I do find it crazy that if we were talking about this a year ago from today, chalking up a week 4 game in Buffalo as a win, I think it's nuts that we're doing that. But I would say with probably 70% confidence, I think we should be able to beat Buffalo. I would love to see us sweep Buffalo this season. It's not a team that I really like.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of hurdle that you're looking to get over. It feels like in years past, it would be the Miami Dolphins that you'd perpetually split with, no matter how good you were and how bad the Dolphins were. More recently, you have been able to get the better of the Dolphins, and it comes down to more of a competition in the two Buffalo games. But it was very different last year in the fact that the Patriots got the job done in Buffalo, and despite having at least a 21-point lead in the home game against Buffalo, Josh Allen and the Bills came back and they get the win in New England. And I guess that's kind of still what scares me about Josh Allen, is the fact that he can take over and just kind of will his team to a win as long as he can find his open receivers, and he can also very much get it done with his legs. So he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league that can kind of just will his team to a win when they need it, and that's kind of what happened a year ago in New England. But I still think that the Patriots are in a position now where they're going to be competing with Buffalo for the top of the AFC East year in and year out.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, going into week 5, I'd say we either be 2-2 or 3-1, and I'd say we pretty comfortably have back-to-back wins against Vegas and the Jets. So
yeah,
I think that will put us into a pretty good spot. Then we got prime time, right, against Chicago.
Yep.
Yeah,
and then another one against the Dolphins after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that another thing I'd definitely touch on about last year's schedule being easy. A lot of people they bring up the fact that we should beat these teams. They're all bad. I think that the biggest thing about it isn't necessarily the skill of the teams. It's if you're a football team, basketball team, any type of team, doesn't matter who you're playing. If you rattle off 10 wins in a row, you get hot. You look at the Red Sox right now.
Exactly.
Look what they're doing. They're just hot. The bats start getting better. Once you win a couple in a row, the whole the morale gets better. The team starts playing better. And I think that was a big thing with us last year. I don't think the Patriots had it in their mind. They didn't care about the schedule. They didn't care about what they did last year. They didn't care about the betting odds. I think they went out there and they played football like they thought they could win against whoever they were playing against. And I think we definitely saw that. So I think back-to-back wins against Vegas and the Jets, having momentum going into a game against Chicago in Chicago on primetime, I think that that's great to have. And I think a win there, that's kind of where you get these Super Bowl teams, these teams that really separate themselves in that week 9-10 range, where into the rest of the season you're looking at this team saying, all right, they could win a Super Bowl. Once they rattle a few good wins off and they really get momentum on their side, the team definitely starts playing better. I'd say that week 9, it's that probably weeks 8 through 10 is where you see teams either take a dip in how aggressive they're playing on the field and how much confidence they have, or you see the team skyrocket. You see guys start playing better.
Yeah, and I think playing that primetime game against the Bears is the first game against the NFC North, which is you'll see all 4 teams in the NFC North on the schedule, which is a tough out of any NFC division that you could play. That's one of, if not the toughest one that you could get, assuming that we know what the Detroit Lions can be, and assuming that Jaden Daniels is healthy. We've seen his success with Washington. So getting that primetime win against the Bears would absolutely be the sort of momentum that can
Caleb Williams?
Point you in the direction of, yes, Caleb Williams is obviously leading the Bears, and then I was mentioning Jaden Daniels with Washington as well, but getting the win against the Bears would absolutely speak to that momentum that Will was mentioning earlier.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually think that is the toughest division for you to play, even though you're playing Seattle. At least you're not playing the West, I guess, because the Rams in Seattle, those are the 2 teams I'm looking forward to watching in the West. And then, I think you'd rather play the East or the South, because Philly just got rid of AJ, and although the Giants, I like Harbaugh there. I do. I hope Malik comes back soon. Or go out and sign Stefan. One of those two moves ought to do it. But I do think that the Patriot that's kind of where the Patriots make or break is that 8 through 10, in my opinion, when you're facing a division you're not really familiar with and teams that really can throw the ball.
Yeah, they get through that 8 through 10, followed by another late bye in week 11, and then another primetime game against the Chargers, the home game against Buffalo, then Minnesota, Kansas City, the Jets a second time, and the Denver Broncos, and then the second game against the Miami Dolphins in that time frame as well.
Definitely a much different look than we had last year. I couldn't agree more. I think going from week 7 into the bye that's the make or break of our season. If in that span we go 3-1, I believe we have a game with the Dolphins snuck in between there. So chalking up that to a win. If we can go 2-1 between the Bears, the Packers, and the Lions, if we can go 2-1 in that span going into the bye, I think that's going to be kind of the biggest part of our season, because it obviously record wise, and in my personal opinion, the biggest part will be just the momentum coming out of the bye. You definitely don't want to go into that bye having gone 1-2 or God forbid 0-3 against those 3 good rosters. You definitely don't want that to happen, but I do really trust this roster this year. I think we can only get better necessarily as a team. Maybe not going to the Super Bowl, but we can only get better as a team with the guys we have.
Yeah, for sure. And then, Will, looking at that back half of the season after the bye, what 1 or 2 games stand out to you as you'll know what this Patriots team is, depending on if they can win or if they lose those games, then you know what direction the end of the season might be headed.
I think the biggest part is going to depend on what Patrick Mahomes looks like on the Chiefs, but I would want to say Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, that's at Arrowhead. That's going to be an incredibly tough game. And if Mahomes is back and looks like Patrick Mahomes, that's not necessarily a make or break game, but that is a huge game where you see what your team's made out of. And then obviously Denver is Denver. And I don't believe, do we know if we're playing in Denver or not yet? Or is that game not decided?
Ooh, that's a good. Let me double check on that. But
It says versus, so I think
Okay.
it is. Those last 2 games are at home.
At home.
Okay.
You just don't know what time you're playing or what day because of the flex.
Because of how the end of the season works. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
well,
Denver's
go ahead.
another
Go ahead,
tough
Will.
team. Yeah. No, Denver's just another tough team. So I'd say Kansas City and Denver would be the 2 games that stick out to me the most on that back half.
Yeah, and then hopefully in between that you'll have the Jets after the Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins to end out the season. So if either of those games don't go your way, the hope is that you can bounce back in the games against the Jets and the Dolphins if all goes right for the Patriots. But
what do you think would be a realistic record?
I think if we win 10 to 12 games, kind of like what you guys said, anything more than that is a huge success. If we win 13 games again, awesome. I don't know if we have that in us with the schedule we have. We'd have to play very, very good football. Anything under 10 wins, we went to the Super Bowl last year. It's a failure. If we win 9 games, that's not a great year, which I don't want to put it out there, but that's also not completely out of the realm of possibility with the schedule we have and the growing pains we could have as a team. But if I were to put my money somewhere, it would be in that 11 win mark, I would say.
Yeah, I like the 10 to 12.
I think you're exactly right. I think that as much as we don't like to talk about that 9-win range, it's definitely possible. It was honestly where a lot of people had the Patriots slotted a year ago with a much different schedule. But it becomes a point also, and what we've talked about a whole lot, is that there is so much momentum shifting throughout the NFL season, so that if they end hot and find their way into the postseason, no matter what seed, if they're playing good football at the time, there's always a chance they could go on a run, similar to how they did this year. Except obviously they were 14-3. Last year, we don't know what the regular season record's going to look like heading into this year. But if they can get hot, anything can happen at any time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I honestly think that first half. Sorry, we're very good at interrupting each other here on the TitleTown Rundown.
I
But
love it. That just means we all got good points to say.
I certainly think that I actually think that the first couple of weeks is going to be more tricky than playing those tougher teams at the end, especially if you get hot, right? And you're playing that good football. To your point, Will, I worry about, hey, preseason we're not playing our starters, and then all of a sudden you're playing in Seattle. Like, I wish that was kind of more in the middle of the schedule, and you're playing Pittsburgh week 1 or Vegas week 2 or whatever, kind of like last year where it was Vegas, then Pittsburgh. Okay, you lost to those teams. Then you started beating up on some better teams. But, you know, I kind of look at that, and that kind of scares me more than playing those playoff-like teams toward the playoff time.
Yeah, for sure. I think that specifically as well, you mentioned Pittsburgh, Kyler. It is always a tough kind of team to play. There's animosity between the Patriots and Steelers, no matter what the roster looks like. It's one that you probably wish you could have had last year, to Will's point. But we're getting that final year of Aaron Rodgers, and they're under Mike McCarthy after they parted ways with Mike Tomlin after he would always find his way into the playoffs with the Steelers. It's going to be a different version of the Steelers that we see. And similar to how the end of the season, you don't know what the teams are going to look like. At the very beginning of the season, when everyone's healthy, you don't know how the teams are going to flow. And that, again, Kyler connects back to your point of how much do we see the number ones in the preseason, and do they come into that Seattle, Pittsburgh in week 1 and 2 looking to kind of build into a rhythm?
Yeah, and I also think too, Joey, you're playing AARP in Aaron Rodgers week 2. You got to take advantage of that. Although he's very good later in the game, like you can't let them have a 1-score game with 2 minutes left. Like he's always been good at that. And so you got to really make sure that your defense is aligned and that A.J. Brown and that offense, Drake Maye and A.J. Brown are ready to go in that game.
Yeah, for sure. To finish it off, Will, I wanted to ask if you had any sort of bold prediction or a standout player heading into this season.
This is tough. I mean, I would love to say, like, oh, I think A.J. Brown's going to go for 1,400 yards, but I don't know. If I were to leave one prediction, it would be that we see the A.J. Brown that we've known in years past, and not necessarily a 1,000-yard guy, but more like a 1,400 yard guy. I think that connection could be incredible. The offense is going to be super spread out, as we've said. Yeah, I guess if I were to leave one prediction, that would be my necessarily bold prediction, would be that A.J. Brown has kind of a 08 Celtics Kevin Garnett vibe to him, where you don't know what he's going to be when he gets to the team, and then he kind of turns it on. And bearing injury, I think it's very plausible just from what we've seen out of him in OTAs so far.
Kyler, one prediction from you, and then I'll finish it off.
Drake Maye wins the MVP.
Whoa.
Why not? You said bold prediction. Hey, he was the runner-up last year to Matt Stafford, who had a great year. And I think Drake Maye will follow it up because I think he's got the coaching, right? And now he's got the 1A. He's got the real receiver now. What can he do with a real receiver? Like, not saying that your receivers were bad, they were B or C level guys. Now you got an A plus. You got a top 5, top 10 receiver in AJ Brown, depending on what form he's in. But you've already seen that he wanted to come here, and he does kind of have that Kevin Garnett vibe. To your point, Will.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we're all looking for Drake Maye to kind of take another leap. I'll go in a different direction on the offensive side. I think I've mentioned it briefly. I'm looking for within the offense to open up. I'm hoping that Trevion Henderson can take a serious leap into a into a top running back. I've been a huge guy for Ramondre Stevenson in the past, but I think that the talent that Trevion Henderson shows and the speed that he displayed heading into this season with a healthy offensive line, this past season, I should say, that with a healthy offensive line going into this year, can he take that leap to a guy that you can trust to be your number one? I think so. I really think that he's going to get that opportunity, and I think that he's going to take it and run with it as a running back. That's a terrible play on words, but you know where I'm going. I think that he saw some glimpses of his success with the deep runs last year, and I hope that can translate into a consistent stud running back for the Patriots, and then Ramondre Stevenson can build off that as needed throughout the season. But that is 3 predictions to finish off the episode here on Boston Sports Zone and the Titletown Rundown. That's going to do it for this episode. Huge thank you to Will for hopping on and talking everything's Pats with us. We'll be back with another episode. Once again, this was the Titletown Rundown here on Boston Sports Zone. He is Skylar Quelch. I am Joey Matroni. Thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your evening.